is the most dramatic podcast ever, an iHeartRadio podcast. This should be interesting.
That's a word for it, I guess.
This should be interesting. Sitting down with Brad Womack. Huh.
Here we go, man. I'm a little scared about this. I'm going to be honest, buddy.
I am too. I was thinking about what you and I were going to talk about.
Sure.
And then oddly, I drew a blank.
Okay.
But there's so much material and so much we haven't talked about, even though you and I have been friends. What year? Let's see. What year were you the Bachelor?
I'll tell you exactly. The first time, 2007. Okay. And then second time was 2010.
2007.
Yes. I'm old. I'm very old.
How old are you?
51.
I say you're a year younger than me.
Yeah.
That was like the rare time. You and Byron Velvick, the bass fisherman.
Oh, yeah.
Who actually maybe, I have to look, he might be older than me. So we did this that was our version of the Golden Bachelor back then. It's like, let's do an older guy. And so we got Byron Velvick, this bass fisherman. And that season didn't go awesome.
Yeah.
But but we kept in touch too. He's a really good guy. We still chat. And then you were the next one where it wasn't old at the time, because what were we back in 2007?
Was 34, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
34, 30.
That's about right.
34. Yeah, 34. Jesus, see, that's how old I am. I can't even remember things in the past
14
anymore.
years ago.
It was a long time,
14 years ago.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So I would have been 38. Wow.
Yeah. So, well, good times, though. Really good times.
That's nuts.
Kind of. But
it was.
I had to throw that in there.
We're good. Well, I tell you what, I think we have to break this up. Well, because you were the only person to be on 2 Bachelor seasons. You were the Bachelor twice. For those that don't know, Brad was the Bachelor in 07 and 2010. And we had never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they'll never do it again after that. But this is also back in the day. This is old school, when we would get really good guys, find them. You didn't have to be on the show before.
Right. Yeah.
Bob Guinea had come off The Bachelorette. There were a couple, but it was more like Aaron Berge, Andrew Firestone, you, and some of these others where we had never met you before. The first time we met you was when you were The Bachelor.
Right. Yeah. Pretty organic way to do it, I would imagine, for you guys. And yeah.
It was a scary thing because we liked it, because you got to build a story and you got to know somebody on the show. But the other thing is, we realized you could cheat a little bit. And if they were on a prior show, there was a built-in audience, right?
Gotcha.
People loved you. People hated you.
Mm-hmm.
They had an idea of what they thought about you. Therefore, there was a story built in. When the season starts, okay, I already know what I think about Brad Womack. Now I'll just meet the ladies and we're off and running.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And so that was kind of the change of the show. We felt like that was the kind of tie we always wanted to have. But with you were kind of a throwback to, we just met Brad Womack, this bar owner from Austin, Texas.
Sure. Yeah.
How did you become The Bachelor? Who found you? How'd it happen?
I'll tell you, it's actually a funny story. It's my brother and my business partner at the time. It was a Sunday afternoon. And
is Chad, your
Chad,
twin brother?
Yeah. My twin brother and my other business partner, Jason. And true story, I'm just going to be honest, we were doing a little day drinking. Yeah. And so we wound up at a popular restaurant in Austin, and you guys were casting for the girls. And so we were eating. Casting agent came down, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, this sounds crazy. Have you heard of The Bachelor?" And I'm not going to lie, I was a big fan of the show. I mean, you guys, of course, were making waves. And it
would have been huge back then in 07.
It was big, man. It was really big. And so it was obviously a very flattering encounter, of course. My first reaction was, I don't know if I'm going to be the right guy, And she said, "Well, we can be very convincing. At least give me your number and we'll call you." And sure enough, you guys called, I think, the week after, and I was on my way to LA. So, fast track into, this wild adventure,
And who did you meet first? Like, how did that all go? Because it was different back then than it is now. I mean, it's gotten so much more professional, so much more. There's so many more levels you got to get through. Back then,
right?
I'm guessing it was, couple of the executive producers, and you met a couple executives, and we're off and running.
That's exactly who it was. It was, Mike, of course.
Yeah.
And then
the creator of the show.
Right. And then Lisa at the time.
Levinson.
That's her. Yeah.
Yep.
And then I was fortunate enough to meet the president of ABC at the time. But it was such a whirlwind, man.
Yeah.
You take a guy from Austin that had no aspirations to be in TV, man. I'm sure you can tell why.
And then you're sitting down. I'm guessing it was Lloyd Braun back then. Was that the president of ABC at the time?
Truly cannot
remember. I bet
remember.
it was. And so you're sitting down with the president of ABC.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
you're like, and they're asking you about love, and you're like, what do you want out of life?
Yeah, well, that's actually what it was,
So
weird.
weird.
And then, obviously what I did for a living, I'm this lowly bar guy. And,
lowly bar
and this,
guy.
well, no, I mean, just, but I'll tell you, it was one of the coolest experiences of my life, meeting people of that caliber, of course. And then, it's a story that I hold on to.
I was trying to think the first time you and I met.
I think it was either the very first night. Obviously we had to have taped something,
but we didn't get to hang out a lot before. Like there's a lot of times where I'll get to know the guys the prior season,
right,
and you hang out a little bit, and then you keep in touch as they lead into The Bachelor. Other times they'll just be in town, and I'll get to see them. Maybe we'll go out to dinner before. My recollection is I don't think that ever happened with you. I think you came in hot, and I didn't get to see you really probably in maybe that first night.
I think that's right. I got to tell you, I'm going to sing your praises real quick. I just want to tell you something. I was most nervous about meeting. I just seen you all over the place, and you're this larger than life personality, and I have to hand it to you. You could not have been cooler, man. And so,
well, we got along. I think the fact that, well, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you and I kind of are cut from the same cloth. I think we got each other, and I found you to be a breath of fresh air and a bit of a relief.
Well, thanks, man.
Not that I disliked. I mean, Andrew Firestone's one of my best friends. So is Bob Guinea. I love those guys.
Yeah.
But when there was a guy from Texas, and about my age, I'm like, I can do this. Like this, I get. Like I understand this. It was very easy for me to get to know you, because that's part of the pressure for me was to try to quickly, again, if I meet you on the driveway as a limo's pulling up, I got to figure out what makes this guy tick. Who is he? What are the buttons I need to push? How can I get him to these emotional areas, et cetera? And with you, I found it very easy.
I appreciate that.
Just because
man.
I feel like, you and I are very similar.
Well, again, I appreciate that coming from you, but yeah, I mean, you could not have been more welcoming, and frankly, I needed it. I mean, that was a very overwhelming experience, especially day one, and you welcomed me with open arms, and so I thank you for that.
Did you, obviously, I'm sure you had some trepidation.
Sure.
You wouldn't be human if you didn't, but to have your business and what's your business, by the way, Lowly Bar Guy, you and your brother and your business partner, you guys owned bars here in Austin.
Right.
At the time, I think it was just Austin where you owned bars.
That's correct. Yes,
and
sir.
They were massively successful, and you guys were killing it.
Thank you.
And by the way, back in the day, that was also the concept of the show.
Right.
Bachelors would have jobs and they would be successful.
Right.
So therefore you would actually be considered a catch.
Okay. I'll take that. Hey, whatever it takes, right? I mean,
it's an old concept we got away from. Then it became like broken people with no jobs.
No, I'll tell you, you guys, they've had some amazing candidates, of course.
I kid because we care. I kid because we don't care.
I like that.
But no, so that was the original concept, and that was like Chris Soules, this farmer from Iowa, hugely successful. And if it wasn't for the show, could they find love? And so that was the premise of bringing in a guy like Brad Womack of this guy's working his ass off, opening bars. The only thing he really hasn't found is love.
Sure. Yeah. A good premise, of course. And
yeah. Too bad it didn't work.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for reminding me, man. And I'm out. Thanks, everyone.
It was a great episode.
And mic drop. Good seeing you.
But you get into this, you had to have some trepidation. And I'm sure there was this will promote the bar business. But what were the other things where you're like, man, I don't know if I want to do this?
Man, I got to tell you, I'll back up a little bit. I don't know if you realize, so I never one time mentioned the bars on air, and I did that purposely, and so one, I didn't want to sell out, but of course, I mean, it went without saying that, you would get some exposure, of course, but I took my career at the time, especially very seriously. And I was a little worried about it damaging the career. And another thing is, I know you know me very well, but people don't. I'm a really, really shy person, and so I was petrified of losing anonymity. You know, I mean, for so many years, I had just gone to work, like you said, and built a career, tried to find a good girl. She wasn't having me. And so anyway, so I went into the first night, admittedly, with a lot of fear and anxiety.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting with your time is, again, remember 07, we're coming into this with Brad. Yes, it was a huge show. And yeah, there was probably 20, 24 million people watching at the time. So you think, how did you want anonymity? But we also didn't have social media.
You're exactly right.
That was the huge thing.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
You weren't being bombarded. Yes, you had to do People Magazine and Entertainment Tonight and all that stuff, but you weren't faced with the social media dilemma that everybody is now.
Sure.
So you still got to, the idea was you could leave and come back and live your life.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I think I'm really concerned with what people think of me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You and me both, man. You and I, no, that's honestly, it's one of the things we bond over.
I agree
we care
with that.
To a fault.
Yes, we do. And yes, we do.
I'm sure our therapist should get together.
We might have the same one. I don't think they can disclose that, but we might have the same one. Anytime she's nodding very aggressively, like I've heard this before, now I know why.
Anyway. Chris Harrison.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are the same.
It makes us good at what we do.
Sure.
It actually makes me a good host because it makes me very empathetic and I care. And again, I care too much. You're the same. Being in the service industry that you've been in, not your whole life, but for the most part, it serves you well.
Well, I appreciate that.
One of our greatest weaknesses is also a strength.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, I like that take on it, of course. And I do want to sing your praises another time as far as you caring, but you're by far the most one of the most compassionate people. And so it makes it easy for guys like me or contestants, whatever you want to call it. Whenever you do come in with that anxiety, you kind of tamp that down a little bit. So we appreciate you, man.
It's a weird thing. And I was always very empathetic because it was interesting that people in the control room, they're removed, right? They're just looking through a monitor and they're looking on screen and they're not going to get dirty. They're not going to get oil on them.
Sure.
So it's easy for them in their little earpiece or in my earpiece to say, hey, say this to Brad or make Brad do this. Or, they're not feeling the nerves, the tension, the fear, the excitement, the sorrow, all those emotions that I would feel by standing on that wet driveway as the limos pull up or as a girl just walked through. And, there's so many things you guys are trying to do that gets lost. Because we're watching the show.
It's such a good point.
And we just want you guys to, you're kind of jumping through hoops, all that, but you guys are kind of serving a lot of masters. And I'm sure you felt this. You can speak to this. You wanted to please me. You wanted to please the network. You want to make sure your family's proud. You want to there's 1,000 things other than just, I would like to find love.
Well, another thing, and the most important thing, I'll be the first to admit again, is I wanted to make a good impression on the women. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. You guys, there are some amazing, I know I use that word too much, but there are some amazing women that come through that show. And then seeing every single one of them get out of the limo and you're thinking, well, you almost kind of have imposter syndrome. What the hell am I doing here? I
would think so.
And of course. I mean, I'm not, again, just building you up, but standing next to Chris Harrison. I'm on one of the most popular shows on television, on one of the most popular networks, and then meeting some just beautiful, achieved, I guess, motivated women. And so, it was really nerve wracking.
Well, it's hard to understand the power of the mansion, the lights.
Oh, of course.
Everything's on you. And when we talk about it and we get you ready and we prep you and all that. Yeah. But until until the director, Ken Fuchs says, all right, roll the first limo in.
Sure.
And you have that realization of, because then I leave and you're standing there alone.
Where'd you go, buddy?
You're standing there by yourself on that driveway and the limo pulls up. You're like, oh shit.
You're damn right.
You see the lights, the camera, and it's action time. That's a big pill to swallow.
It is. But it's so exciting, man. And of course I do have some regrets just on some of the things I personally did before and after the show. But I'm so grateful for that time, man. And the relationships that I made with you and some of the girls and some of the producers and everything. So, wouldn't have traded anything.
What regrets before and after, during and after?
Well, some of the things I say and do, I'm a complete idiot, man. I'll be the first to say. I mean,
we all are.
Jesus, buddy. But I didn't carry myself in ways that I normally do back home. I don't know if I got caught up in moments. I don't have specific examples, but I really do, and it's not like I watch it back, especially now. But some of the episodes, I'm thinking that's not you. I don't know if I was trying to put on a facade, and because that's typically not like me.
I don't think you were putting on airs. Like I never got the feeling you were being disingenuous. Like
I hope not.
But what I think is, if I was your therapist, and I was for a short time.
Yes, you were. Yes, you much appreciated. In fact, you still haven't invoiced me. Thank you.
No, what I saw from you is you try so hard. You always do this. And this happens in our own life when we're at dinner or whatever. You try hard to make everybody feel loved and appreciated.
Thanks, man.
And so, when you were with those women, I think, again, you were trying to please everybody. You're trying to please the camera guy, the audio, the producers, and take care of these ladies. And I think the way that you really have to go through that show is you got to be a little selfish.
You know what? That's an outstanding point, actually. And I don't, that's one thing I'll give credit for. I don't think I have a selfish bone in my body, right?
You do not.
And I think I could see a lot of that same fear and anxiety in the women. Mm-hmm. And come on, man, we're supposed to be protectors as men. You know, we just are, even if I just met these girls.
Yeah.
And whether they ask for that protection or not. But so a lot of times I'd try to make them feel okay. And all the time I'm just going absolutely insane inside. But it worked out, man. And so maybe, regret might be a strong word.
Yeah.
I just look back and I wonder, what was I thinking at that moment?
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, are you a regret guy? I'm not a big regret guy.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah.
I'm not either. So maybe, again, that might have been the wrong word. So maybe I just would have done things differently. I mean, I have the benefit of watching it if I want to change anything.
Well, that's like when you wake up on Monday and watch the Sunday football game. And it's easy to break down game film.
There you go.
It's easy.
There you go.
The Monday morning quarterback is, but that's why the show is so great. And there's still that audience, that insatiable appetite for these reality shows and shows like this.
Sure.
Is because we get to judge. I mean, you are the Monday morning quarterback and you get to watch Brad Womack and everyone like him, trip and fall and make mistakes and find love or not find love. And we get to watch that and judge it.
You know what? On that, that's actually an exciting way to put it, and so you're right. But sometimes, court of public opinion can be really brutal. We all know that. Just try not picking anybody.
Doctor recommended prescription medical emergency cafe at Chateau Rosabelle, a glamorous estate where the rich come to play.
Most healthcare providers.
That leads us to, okay, we're in season 1. So this is 2007.
Sure.
And it's not like we had a run of great success.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we had all these marriages. By then, Trista had been married.
Yeah.
We had gone through several seasons where there had been engagements, but nothing hugely successful,
right?
Other than Tristan and Ryan,
right?
We're still hanging on to that one.
I love them, by the way, man.
Oh, they're the best.
Great people. Yeah.
It just had her on the podcast not too long ago, and
nice.
It's still like we fall right back into place. Kind of like when you come in, it's like there's just certain moments in time and certain people from the show where I see them, and I don't care if I haven't seen you for 5 years,
man,
or 5 minutes. You just fall right back into it.
I agree where you're concerned, 100%.
When you walked in the door, you just came to the door. By the way, this is only the second home interview I've done.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, now I damn sure feel special.
I think in large part because no one wants to see me. I think secondly, because now I live in Austin. But so Jason Tartick was here.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so Jay did it. And so you're the second home interview.
Yeah. I've heard good things about Jason, by the way. He's a Nashville guy, right?
He is. Yeah. He lives. I think he's trying to get out now. So yeah, you're number 2.
Well, I appreciate the invite very much.
It's the only way I could get you to come out to the house.
Come on, man. When Chris Harris, I think I told your producers this whenever they texted me and asked me to come on here, but if you ask me to do anything, I'm doing it. Period. I'm doing it.
You have always been that guy.
No. And I'm not looking for accolade or a pat on the back. I'm just saying, one, I know you always come from a good place. And 2, I just want to see you. This is cool and all. I just want to hang out with you.
Well, I will tell 2 stories that will define Brad Womack.
Uh-oh.
And I tell these stories all the time. You are still the only person who's ever been on the show that gave me a parting gift.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I mean,
do you remember?
Of course I do. I'm getting embarrassed, but yeah, of
do you
course.
remember what it was?
I don't remember what it was. I know I gave you a gift.
There was a shirt I love that you had. This is back.
Okay.
This is back before, I kept wardrobe and all that good stuff. And you had a shirt, and I'm like, God, I love that shirt. And you wore it maybe a couple times on the show.
Right.
And clearly, if you're looking at this video, we're not the same size. I'm actually a normal sized human. Jesus, man, you're a hulk of a human
Come
being.
on, man. Come on.
Like,
it's
we'll get into that in a minute.
Sure.
But, clearly, we're not the same size. I'm a schmedium, and you're an XL.
Oh, buddy.
So what you did though is when the show was over, you wrote me a note, and you went and bought that shirt.
Okay.
And you gave it to me.
Okay.
It was like this plaid red and blue shirt.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And you also got something for Carrie Fettman, who did wardrobe, and Gina Modica, who has been my longtime makeup artist.
Right.
And to this day, you are the only bachelor or bachelorette who has given me a little something. Just to say thank you. Even though the first season was a disaster, it didn't go well, and it didn't go well for you, but you gave me. Now, there is one other bachelor, and I will not out him.
Okay.
He did kind of give me, Carrie, and Gina a gift.
Okay.
It was a signed headshot.
No, it wasn't.
I swear,
no, it wasn't.
I shit you not, Brad.
If I ever give you a headshot, much less a signed one, punch me in the face.
I swear to you.
Really?
It was the weirdest moment. I thought it was a joke at first, and then I realized there was a note written on it, and he sincerely gave us a headshot as a thank you gift.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the positive here, and he thought of us enough to write something on his own photo that he gave. I think I still have it. I think I kept it in this drawer right behind us here. But so these headshots, I don't even know if they still do this, but when a bachelor would come in, we do our fittings for clothes and all that. We have the ABC photographer. We would do like a whole press kit. We would do photos for you. So if we ever went out and, did a press meeting or whatever, we'd sign, you'd have those, those headshots.
Oh yeah.
And, it used to be, that was kind of a bigger deal than, again, pre-social media, you would sign photos.
Sure.
So that was the only other person that's given a gift was this bachelor who will remain nameless. You're welcome. But he gave us signed headshots. And I'll never forget because he gave it to us and he walked out and Gina and Carrie and I were sitting there packing up and we all just looked at each other like, did that just happen?
That's, I feel bad for how I feel inside after I'm telling you.
It was cringe.
So, because I want to think that came from a sincere place.
Yeah.
But
it was
who knows?
Not great. Do you remember any of the women from your first season?
Could you? I'm not that old.
Okay. So like,
of course.
I think we all know, I think unless you are too young and you haven't watched the show, which you should go back and watch it. Deanna Pappas,
of course,
and Jenny Croft were your final two.
Right.
Who were some other kind of stars from that first season? Do you
Bettina,
remember?
first and foremost, man, who I love still to this day. I love to death. And
she went deep into the show.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, just an amazing girl. Anyway,
did we travel at all for that first season?
Not much.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you guys were going through a rough patch.
Well, 2007, we didn't do, we kind of hadn't gotten to the point where we traveled a whole bunch.
Yeah.
That was really kind of kicked off in Charlie O'Connell's season.
Gotcha.
And then, but by the time you came back in 2010, we did.
Right.
We definitely traveled.
Well, so we went to Cabo in 2007, and I know you know where I'm going with this, right?
Tell the story.
I want to sing your praises. I always thought highly of you, but this is when I knew you were a very real man, if this makes sense. Yeah. So we're in Cabo San Lucas, and unfortunately, well, let me back up a little bit. I'll make it quick.
Yeah. No, tell the whole story.
We had a very rare night out.
Yes.
Okay. And Cabo San Lucas is a pretty wild spot. We all know that. It's fun, but it can get a little rough.
But this is also before, this is kind of old school days where there weren't really many rules to our production.
Gotcha.
And what I mean to say is there was no professionalism.
Yeah.
There was no line between production, cast, whatever. You know what
said
I mean?
it, I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that changed dramatically after a huge flame out and a big blow up of massive proportions that almost killed the show.
Oh, wow.
And people went off to rehab and many things happened.
Jesus, buddy. Okay.
But back then, as you know, we would rap for the night, and then we would all go out. You included,
fun, man. Yeah, and so we're all in a van.
Yes,
and 3 of the production guys, which, by the way, I love that whole crew.
So we went to, do you remember where we went?
I think it was Squid Row,
Squid Row.
or Giggling Marlin. We went to a few places.
We're at Squid Row.
Okay, so Squid Row is again, and there was a dust up, and it was with 3 of the production guys, and you and I were already in the van,
Yeah.
right?
We had left and we had pulled around.
That's exactly right. We look over, and these guys are in a little dust up with some locals. And you said, I'm not going to watch this happen. I'm going to get out of the van and help them. Of course, I'm going to help them too. We're both trying to get after them. And of course, it was one of the executive producers that threatened both of us with a lawsuit. I don't know if you remember that. Okay, yeah, you could get out of the van. You're both going down. And
we were in like a 12-seater van.
Yes,
and so
we were.
Rows, and you and I were kind of 2 rows back from the door.
Right.
And we were pulling around, from the parking lot because you and I were heading back to the hotel.
Yeah.
And you were the first one that said, oh crap, there's a fight. And we're like, thought it was kind of cool at first.
Sure.
And then we saw, oh my God, that's our crew.
Sure.
And, we think of those guys as brothers and family. And so I was like, screw that. Stop the car. The driver stops the car.
Sure.
I go to grab the door. I'm climbing over the seats.
Yes,
You're coming
you did.
after me. And we're like going to jump into this fracas outside of the Squid Row in
Yes,
Cabo.
we were.
And that's when I think it was David Albrecht.
That it had to have been David, because I mean he made no bones about it.
And he
said,
jumped in front of the door and said, you cannot get out of this van, threatened us and told the driver to drive. And we were screaming as we were pulling off, trying to get out of the car to join this fight with these locals.
Well, he definitely mentioned a lawsuit, and whether it was just to instill fear, but I got to tell you, man, that shows your character that, above anything else, you are a good friend to people. You care about people. And so I tell that story. I've told that story 1,000 times over. I might embellish it a little bit, like I was the first one jumping out of the van. I'm kidding. But
I held you back. But it is funny. Like how funny is that when I think about if David hadn't been where he was, like if we had been reversed, if you and I had been sitting in the front seat, he had been in the back, and there's no reason it wasn't the opposite. We just happened to get in the van first and you and I hopped in the back. If it had been the opposite, you and I in 2007, the Bachelor and the host would have jumped into a fight outside Squid Row.
Yes, we would have.
And probably gotten the shit kicked out of us.
Of course we would have. Come on, man. I mean, neither one. I don't know about you. I can't fight. Yeah. I don't want to fight.
You and I would have been going at it.
But it would have made for a good story.
It would have made, I mean, luckily it makes for a good story. And despite the fact of how you see me, I've never broken this nose. But that we came moments away from just being in a full out brawl on the streets of Mexico.
Yeah, but I mean, and again, the takeaway from that story is just how much you care for your friends, know. And so
I love the crew, and I still have friends on the crew and producers as well, and love them because, as you know, it is very intimate. It's very personal. We would travel. We saw marriages, divorces, babies being born, people passing away in our lives. And we were it was almost like a traveling circus or a rock group that would travel, on tour. We were together a lot and alone a lot.
Yeah, man.
And you rely on each other. And so these people meant a lot to us all, and we tried to take care of them. And even if it was, after we had way too many tequila shots at Squid Row, but those were the old days where we finished shooting. Remember Cassie was there, Pete and everybody. And we were, doing shots and dancing our asses off. And we were soaking wet, just sweating, and had a blast. And then we got up the next day and shot more dates.
Yes, we did. It was a good time, man. And so, yeah, you're right. Even in 2010, it changed a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell, it was like, oh no, you're not going anywhere after we're filming, and so I just hid my little corner and did what I was told.
There was a downtime. You mentioned that, and there was a downtime in the show where I had heard Lloyd Braun actually had canceled the show.
Oh,
where the show was dead and it was not coming back.
Right.
And partly because they deep down, I think they wanted to kill it. They did not like the creator of the show.
Yeah.
There was always this horribly contentious relationship between the network and the production.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And they hated each other.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there was me that was like the bastard stepchild, kind of like trying to keep everybody happy and trying to be the liaison between these two warring factions. And it was really weird. But, rumor had it that he had canceled the show, and then that's when we did Dr. Travis Stork, and we went to France.
Yeah. Okay.
And we went to Paris, and we're like, screw it, we're just going to go shoot in Paris and spend all the money. And then his show did really well. And then the next thing you know, we came back, and then there was Dr. Andy Baldwin, and the show's back.
Yeah.
And, and Jake Pavelka. And then, now we've gone for 20 some odd years. But
Amazing.
Back then, there was that time when we had really gone high. And then because it was a dysfunctional family at the time, we were kind of falling apart.
So you're telling me that's why I was selected. Like, I throw anyone in there, it doesn't matter.
Well, what I'm saying is, and this is what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
You had to. I know you felt some of that.
I did, and that's something. I think about often.
Because I know there was a couple of executive producers that we won't name names. We won't go into too many intimate details, but there was some rough nights.
There, you hit the nail on the head, and I'll admit, there were some times like, what the hell am I putting myself into? Like, why did I even make this decision? I don't have to do this, you know? And I try to kind of go with the flow a little bit. I was extremely grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah.
But it sure didn't seem reciprocated. And you could tell, anybody with half a brain could tell that there were a lot of different people going in a lot of different directions, and frankly, it didn't seem like anyone cared about the actual show.
Right.
And so, you've got a guy, like I said, completely untalented, and, I'm just trying to do what I'm told. But I did. I butted heads with some of the producers big time. And on that same note, though, I fell in love with some of the other producers.
Right.
So.
And that's the thing is there was this, and so back in 2007 especially, I was really, separated from talent from you.
Sure.
We were together, we'd go out and stuff like that. But as far as the production side of things, I wasn't there to protect you. I wasn't there to produce. I wasn't even really a producer per se at the time.
Yeah.
I was just kind of doing what I was told by the executive producers that were really running the thing. And like you said, then there was this big gap between the executive producers at the time.
Sure.
And then those producers under them. And I think those under them are the ones you really found to be lovely and became very good friends with. And they were really intimately trying to help you. Then there was the executive producers it was a mess.
It was rough, man. It was rough. And again, I don't know what to expect in that situation. Right. I don't know what I'm getting into.
Why would you?
Well, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm a little unfair, but hey, look, trust me, I'm no one to have a victim mentality. It's just, I think we made it through, and unfortunately, it turned out how it did.
You wake up with a sore throat and low-grade fever. The worst feeling, right? When having an urgent care in your home, and use promo code meets world-class drama. This month, it's streaming now.
An oncologist to encompass.
Obviously, there is a season 2 to come for you. Well, that was season 1. And obviously, there is a season 2 to come for you that we didn't know about. But at the end of season 1, all I remember is we get to the end.
Yes.
And again, I'm a little bit separated. So when I show up that final day, we shoot your final day in Malibu. That's how old school the show is. We're still shooting in LA.
Yeah, sure.
It was a beautiful house.
Thanks
by
for
the way.
nothing. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It was
beautiful
amazing.
house. And I remember showing up that day, and this is how naive I was back then. I asked, who's he going to propose to?
Yeah.
That's how out of touch.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You didn't know?
No, I didn't know because, I was definitely on a need to know basis back then.
Wow.
They, when I say they, I'm talking about the 2 or 3 executive producers who were really running the show back then. They were control freaks and definitely kind of megalomaniacs in their personalities. And they really controlled information. That's how they controlled you. That's how they controlled the producers under them. That's how they controlled everybody, and myself included. That's how they wanted to, they really wanted to have everybody under their thumb. And part of that was by controlling information. And so I didn't really know exactly what was going to happen that final day.
Can I ask you something? Yeah. Honest question?
Yeah.
Not the podcast answer, but an honest answer.
Totally.
Were you disappointed in me that I didn't pick anybody?
No, but I was shocked.
Yeah.
I told you, so when we talked that day, so again, if you guys didn't remember this season, it was the first time ever that a Bachelor didn't choose anybody at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
It was down to Deanna and Jenny, and two lovely women.
Mhm.
You really appreciated and liked them both. I knew that.
Yes, I did.
And Brad Womack didn't choose anybody.
Mhm.
Here's what I remember about that day. There was a guy named Jason who was
Mhm.
Jason Carbone, who worked on the show at the time,
Sure.
and you were tight with him, and he was working with you intimately. And then there were the executive producers, and I remember the tension.
Oh yeah.
I remember walking on set that day, and everybody was really fired up. I'm like, what's happening? It's supposed to be, it's final day.
Mhm.
And they said, he's not going to choose anybody,
Mhm.
but we're working on him.
Mhm.
We'll get him to flip.
Mhm.
We'll get him.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, well, just that sentence alone is really effed up.
Of course.
If he doesn't want to pick anybody and we're going to try to convince him to do something that he clearly doesn't want to do,
Sure.
we're in a pickle. This
Sure.
is not great.
Sure.
And I saw you
Mhm.
and you were despondent and definitely detached.
Of course. Yeah. Can I explain that?
Yes.
I give you my word, this is as sincere as I can be. I was thinking more about the girls, and only because I knew I had already dug my grave, man. I mean, I knew this was going to be really bad. And again, mentioning the producers, they let me know it was going to be really bad for me.
Yeah.
And it's not a good thing to walk into, right? But I swear to God above, man, thinking about both Jenny and Deanna, because I did care for both of them. They deserved much better than me, but they also deserve the truth, right? And so that show, unfortunately, the premise, you kind of, even if it's involuntarily, lead people on. You
Mhm.
just do.
Yeah.
I never said the word I love you to either one of them. I was very adamant about that. But anyway, so I was thinking about this, and I was really nervous about how that would go for those two women. I didn't want them to think I was trying to publicly embarrass them.
Yeah.
And again, I had, unfortunately, producers in my ear kind of beating me up a little bit. Like,
a little bit.
oh yeah, normally we have a rap party. You're not getting one. I mean, telling me that before we're filming with
Okay,
you,
you're
man.
being too nice. I remember
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah.
There was a knockdown drag out fight.
Yes, there was.
There was
Yes,
yelling.
I'm glad you're bringing that
there
up.
was
Yes,
yelling.
there was.
There was screaming.
Yes, there was. It was just wild. It's kind of Hollywood stuff, and let's just call it the proverbial open checkbook to make me change my mind, right? And I'm so glad I have a chance to tell people this right now because I had to hold back, and I very, very proudly declined.
I've never heard this story.
You didn't know that?
No.
Hand to God, that's a true story, man.
Well, I believe
I
you.
mean, hand to God, and
I've never heard that story.
and that's it. It did
and
get.
I wasn't in the room that day.
Yeah.
They kept
Oh
me
no,
away.
you weren't.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
four of the. It was the four.
Yeah.
Right. And so and it was just one of those things that basically, what will it take? And I'm really proud about that moment. But after that, after they knew there was no flipping, because I never knew they said we're going to try to flip
Yeah.
into you, and so but it got really rough, man. Reminded that I'm nothing without the show, and okay, great. I mean, one last thing I'll say about that whole situation though. In my very initial interview, when the very first one in LA, and it was all on camera, I looked to the camera. And I was laughing saying this, and I said, I want to say this to the camera. I might not be the right guy because if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to pick anybody. And I brought that up in that meeting that I was telling you about.
Right.
And I said, please review the tape, man. And so anyway, but unfortunately they didn't take it well. I get it. There's, that show, there's an expected ending. But to me, that's real life. I didn't go on there to fake it.
And when you asked me, was I ever disappointed? My answer is absolutely not, because I thought that was the most real ending we'd ever had. And that's not to say, obviously, Ryan and Trista and people
Of
got
course.
married. That was very
Yeah.
real. But what I
Sure.
mean by that is this was the truth. Like, this is what happened. And
Absolutely.
I never thought the show was successful or that it was predicated on the fact that it had to be successful in the end. I think the realism is sometimes it doesn't work out in
Sure.
life. And to pretend and to have a fake, proposal, which we had up to that point.
Of
We had a
course.
couple fake ones
Sure.
that they just wanted an ending, and the person felt pressure, probably like you did, and they caved.
Sure.
Maybe they took a check. Who knows?
Who
But
knows?
But at the time they did propose, and then, they would quickly fall apart.
Yeah.
And there's different reasons for that, right? You want to impress everybody. You want to, keep the girl happy. You want, you do things for a lot of reasons. But in your situation, I thought I had no problem with it. My only problem was I really liked you as a friend by then. And I was thinking, this guy's going to get crushed.
Oh, man.
He's going to get his ass kicked in the court of public opinion.
And I did.
Even though you let everybody down gently and you were very honest about it.
Sure.
But you got your ass kicked.
Buddy, this is another thing you don't know that I'll tell you. I'll tell you how bad it got. I can sum it up. About 3 months after that, and I was just getting railed, man. And thank God there was no social media then.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean, I just can't imagine. But
and the show wasn't exactly protecting you because they were mad at you.
Oh, no. I mean, I actually kind of understand that. I was thrown under the bus by the show, but I kind of understand that.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean,
protect the shield.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, just call it clickbait for ratings. I mean,
right.
He's a terrible person. I get all of that. I understand it. Kind of what I signed up for. But about 3 months into that, the public beating, I lost my voice for like 8 weeks straight. I couldn't speak. And I mean, literally had to write down my thoughts. Stress.
Yeah.
I would go to every specialist. And then finally I went to the therapist and she realized it was stress. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that because I wish I could say that I have such thick skin.
Shit.
But I mean, I lived in a high rise, right? People would come to the front door, try to get up and just to tell me to F off. And thank God for security. I mean, I'd be at gas stations and sweet looking young girls would come up, just give me the middle finger, walk away. True story.
Yeah.
True story. So, but anyway.
It was a wild time because, when anybody says, and I'll defend anybody on the show, I don't care who you are, when anybody says you signed up for this, sure, yes. Technically, you signed on the dotted line, but there is no way that a bar owner from Austin, Texas is in any way prepared for what you're going to face, and whether it was good or bad.
Well, I agree with that, man.
I mean, it's like I always say, it's like being shot out of a cannon without a net on the other side.
Yes, sir.
No one prepares you to go from, the Concrete Cowboy over in Austin to Jimmy Kimmel Live, and back then was probably Jay Leno, the morning shows,
sure.
You're the dancing chicken all of a sudden. And,
absolutely.
And it's hard to fathom how much attention you get, especially back then before social media, but the interest level was so high.
Well, and on that note, man, what's so funny? And one of the main motivators of me doing the show is, and now I think you know me very well now, I'm a really shy person, man. I don't like attention.
You are. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm thinking here.
Knowing you later after the second season.
Sure.
I'm like, how the hell and why the hell did this guy ever do the show?
I'll tell you why, man. Yeah. I was talking to my twin brother, Chad, and said, before I ever went on, and said, maybe this is a good way to force me out of that box.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a very social industry, meaning bar business and hospitality. And maybe this is a way, maybe that's why I haven't met the right one. Who knows, And so anyway, and we mentioned at the beginning of this, I do care what people think. So it was a rough time.
But yeah, it's funny. Your personality is not one that I would think, because it's not like you have this type A you're a charismatic guy.
Well, thank you.
But when you're in an intimate situation, you're fantastic. But I get the shyness in you.
Sure.
You're not I want to be in the limelight kind of guy.
Chris, I'm still not on social media today.
I know.
Still.
I love that.
I think I'm the only dinosaur that has never, actually I tried Instagram for about 6 weeks and posted one thing and it made my skin crawl. It was so disingenuous.
God bless you. Made it out alive, man.
I mean, I'm telling you. And so anyway, it was just rough just being thrown in that spotlight, especially such a negative one.
Before we go on this episode, what was the reaction of Deanna and Jenny when you did, obviously in the moment we all watched it on TV, but did you ever talk to them later? Do you keep in touch with either one of them?
I wish I kept in touch. When I talked to them after that, the first time was when we filmed the first night of my second season.
Okay.
And so many people thought that was scripted. I'll tell anybody out there, it was not, buddy.
It was scripted by us. We had planned it clearly.
Of course.
But you didn't know.
I didn't know it all. And there were a couple times Deanna and I stayed in touch. I really cared for her.
Yeah.
And actually, I really cared for Jenny, but Deanna and I definitely had a connection. And her reaction in particular, she's a very, very caring human being.
Very, yeah.
And from what I know of her, she wears her emotions on her sleeve. And I'm saying that in a good way.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to let you know
Well,
it.
she went on to be a great bachorette
Yes,
with us.
she did, man.
We had talked about Jenny as well. Jenny, I think, was in Arizona and got married, kids.
Good.
I ran into her or heard from her not too long ago. And actually, I hear from Deanna quite often. We still keep in touch a little bit.
Yeah,
just like a sweet, sweet woman.
Both of them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they both really are.
Yeah.
This might be tough. And you can take the fifth. You do not have to answer this.
I'll tell you.
How close were you to actually proposing? Or was that just completely a no?
Nowhere close.
Okay.
And
If it had been,
yeah.
if you had chosen
Sure.
one, gun to your head,
Sure.
were you closer to Deanna or Jenny?
Deanna, hands down.
Okay, I
And-
thought so too.
Yeah, I think that's been publicly said, and
Okay.
and I want to publicly say it's nothing against Jenny. It's just
Of
you have
course.
certain connections.
Yeah.
I really had feelings for Deanna.
Y'all are more similar anyway. Your personalities,
Absolutely.
I could see that, especially back then.
She's tough, man. She's
Yeah.
a no BS person. I love that. I love when people are very direct. Right? You don't have to sugarcoat anything with me.
So, but I kind of had that feeling that if it had been somebody, it would have been Deanna.
Yep.
Such a tumultuous time after the show.
Sure.
You're getting your brains beat in.
Sure.
People are, like you said, coming to the door of your condo and,
Sure.
and coming after you. And then you decide,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do this again.
I knew where this was going, and I'm actually happy to say this. I give you my word. I mean this. I believe in that show. I believe in that show, and I believe, and I'm not a guy that needs redemption for anything. I think life happens how it should, man, and I really, really, really derailed my life in the first season. But yes, I did do it again because I believe in second chances. But it wasn't redemption at all.
Yeah,
it was. I believe in the possibility of seeing that one person that it just gives you that spark, and it's fun and it's exciting.
Well, there was a season 2 of The Bachelor with Brad Womack. What in the world was he thinking? How did it turn out? And what's he up to now? Is he still single? Business-wise, how is life for Brad Womack? That will be in our next episode.
Thank you.
You were
buddy.
The Bachelor twice. You get 2 episodes of the most dramatic podcast ever. Has there ever been a more appropriate reason to have 2 episodes? We'll see you next time.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Instagram at The Most Dramatic Pod Ever. And make sure to write us a review and leave us 5 stars. I'll talk to you next time.